But we are here to talk about the Environmental Select Committee's submitted its recommendations on the proposed ETS reforms at the beginning of May. It found that the introduction of a price floor for New Zealand units of $20 and a price ceiling of $50 was appropriate, and that the bill should proceed largely unchanged. This has been in spite of repeated submissions highlighting the potential devastating effects such legislation could have on our rural towns and communities. Now, joining us now is East Coast farmer Kerry Worsnop, who has been following the government's obsession with planting out our food-producing farmland and trees. Kerry, firstly, can you give us some context in where the amendment bill currently is before Parliament and what this will mean for New Zealand farmland from your perspective?
Yeah, so as you said, a lot of this legislation continued to move through the lockdown while we were essentially all being blinded by COVID. And it was quite a shock to me to see that report released from the Select Committee. It was really quite a big surprise to see just how much progress had been made while we were all kind of looking the other way. And since that report was released, the speed of progress has only increased, so that the second reading of the bill has taken place. It has also progressed to the Committee of the Whole House, and so far as I can tell on the parliamentary website, it is yet to pass its third reading, but given it's passed everything else, it seems fairly obvious that it will be passed into law, which in terms of ramifications for farming, they're quite massive, and I would really caution anybody, do not underestimate the scale of this.
You've said that the government is just hell-bent on their own particular outcome and absolutely have the blinkers on when it comes to the reality of market forces and the impact on rural communities. What do you believe they're trying to achieve by, as you said, bulldozing their way through this under COVID?
I think in many ways they've kind of boxed themselves into a corner. They've told the whole country and really the world that we are going to lead and that we're going to do it using essentially the Net Zero Carbon Act, and that we're going to measure up to the Paris Accord. And so when you've got a 3-year election cycle, you actually don't have a lot of time. And I think probably that's one of the most obvious things I would say in the passing of this law is that they haven't given themselves enough time to come up with a good one. So we've got a very expedient means of meeting our commitments. And in order for our country to do that, we're essentially going to hand provincial New Zealand to the forest sector. We're not genuinely bringing about the kinds of changes that the bill was meant to bring about, which was to change people's behaviour, so to change businesses' behaviour. And really what it does instead of that is it provides certainty of being able to offset, really. And I think the appetite for offsetting is going to be enormous because the relative comparison between changing, for example, Air New Zealand does not have the capacity to put a 20 or 50 tonne battery in an airplane and just change its business model tomorrow. It doesn't have a choice. It has to use fossil fuel. And we have a whole swag of other industries that are equally reliant on a model that is going to have to pay for its liability. And the only way we can essentially pay for those liabilities is by planting farmland. There's no other way.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I could hear through my head those words reduce, reuse, recycle. We sort of forget about the first word, which is reduce. It's been replaced with offset, hasn't it? Now, we've got companies emerging that claim that they are in the best interests of New Zealand owned, such as dryland carbon farming. What's your thoughts on these syndicates that are effectively making the most of the price of these units?
I think it's smart. That's probably the first thing I'd say, because there's relatively, well, there isn't, to my knowledge, any other industry anywhere in New Zealand where somebody will guarantee you a minimum of what you're going to earn. You can't lose money. Why wouldn't you invest in it? So very shrewd on their part. Also, probably the potential was there to make the likes of Dryland Carbon and the New Zealand Carbon Farming Company, to make them actually achieve something good for our country. The lack of controls around the ETS means that they can essentially take the easiest route and plant whatever they can buy in pine trees, because that will sequester carbon the fastest. We could have had immense biodiversity benefits. We could have had, we could have had the restoration of waterways that farmers are really struggling to restore from their own funds. The opportunity in this was huge, and it was just kicked down the road, basically. And instead, we're going to take an expedient road that's going to leave us with enormous costs to carry. Our children and our grandchildren will pay for this fully.
You've stated in the piece that you've sent to me that there is so many lessons from the past in the 80s. Could you explain what we're not listening to history on?
So farming has probably the most pertinent advice that the forestry industry could possibly want at this time, and that is, if you look back, when the government dangles a carrot in front of your nose, you should be suspicious, because ultimately the thing that governs the success of an industry is never government policy. It's the market. It's who wants your product, what kind of product do they want, and what are they prepared to pay for it. The ETS is completely disjointed from that. It does not marry up in any way, shape or form what we will be growing in our forests with what forests will be paid. Under a $35 carbon price, most foresters will be making as much from carbon as they will be from the trees. Now, tell me that you're going to bother with the silvicultural regimes that result in a really strong forestry industry. We are essentially driving the forestry industry down the same road that the 70s took farming down, where we ate every single blade of grass on every one of our farms. Droughts were horrifying to live through, and frankly, we didn't meet the expectations of our market. It didn't end well, and I think you'd be blind not to say that we're essentially heading down the same track. We're not doing the forest industry any favours, and ultimately, this kind of market distortion will hurt not only farming but forestry as well.
It does concern me when you've pointed out to me that there was the submissions that have been ignored from the devastating effects on our rural communities. For those who are watching, could you explain firstly what you've seen not only now but in the past on what it's done to Gisbourne communities?
Yeah, look, I guess that the thing that really keeps me awake at night is that myself, and there's a lot of people like me who have plowed countless hours and days and weeks and months into trying to highlight just how badly this will affect our communities. And it's really quite gut-wrenching to see the fact that I trawled through all of the associated reports and different things that the select committee requested information on, and I couldn't find anything anywhere where they actually delved into and asked questions about how this would affect our community. those submissions were largely or entirely ignored because it's inconvenient. If you take into consideration the fact that rural communities will suffer for this, it suddenly puts a question mark over the whole scheme, which I don't think anybody was prepared to do. There's been a very slight concession in the bill where they say that the commission, the Climate Commission, can determine if too much forestry is happening. But there's absolutely no guidance as to what that threshold would look like. Does it have to be a whole region? Does it have to be half a region? And given that the commission is appointed by the government, it makes a little bit of a mockery of the independence of it.
What do you make of this particular coalition government and the multiple agendas at play, Kerry? Because you have a climate minister, James Shaw, with an agenda. You have Shane Jones in regional development with his hand in the forestry pocket. You have Eugenie Sage with conservation and her lack of appetite for overseas investment into our land, foreign ownership. You have a trade minister who also wears an environment minister hat, and an agricultural minister who seems to be very quiet.
Quiet's an understatement. I think, and to be honest, I thought this right from the outset, it's the perfect storm. And exactly that. You've had essentially we've got policies upon policies upon policies that have collided with each other to result in probably, if it's all borne out, which really this just needs a substantive government, the seal, we're talking about probably the biggest changes that we've seen since the 80s. The 80s was more or less, we brought it on ourselves to a certain extent by taking those subsidies and running with it. This, really, is a totally different kettle of fish. Somebody somewhere has deemed that we're no longer necessary as an industry, that quite frankly, we're not as efficient as the forest sector when it comes to meeting, I guess, all the targets that they've set for themselves. But if you look at COVID, it was a really, really graphic example of just what it is that people do value first and foremost. And forestry was shut down as non-essential. Farming, we still had to feed people. I think there's no question about it. We've got a big battle ahead of us in terms of elevating just what provincial and rural New Zealand has to offer our country. We've been too quiet, and maybe we need to share that story a little bit more. But that's probably the biggest and most critical thing I would say to farmers. Stand up, be proud.
Standing up on the steps of Parliament certainly got under the collar of one New Zealand First Minister. When I talked to him as we pivoted into this live show, Kerry, he went, "Oh, no. Farmers, no, I was just joking. We love farmers. We need farmers. If I rang up tomorrow and said, Shane, I want you on the show," which I think I'm going to, what would you like me to ask him?
I would say, are you genuinely a regional economic development minister? Because if you are, you're supposed to have our back.
I'm going to ask him just that, Kerry. Thank you so much. Tune in tomorrow at Sarah's Country. Before I let you go, though, Kerry, I know that you love supporting local music. And Gizzy, we've been talking about Gizzy with Rhythm and Vines. Joel was there this New Year's Eve. But what is your favourite Kiwi artist that you love?
I have to say I've been done the rounds in Gizzy quite a bit, but in my younger days it was shepherding. We had Long to Catch a Fire.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got pretty good memories from that, yeah.
Oh, when you go to a Catch Fire concert, there's like a certain style of movement that you can't break out of. Eh?
Totally. That's yeah, definitely matched up with the Gizzy vibe.
And a certain smell as well.
Slightly.
Yeah. Hey, awesome. Thank you so much, Kerry Worsnop, for joining us, and I absolutely loved getting into that with you. This is Sarah's Country.